It doesn't matter what dofo raid it is, history will repeat itself. And with Ozma Raid being out for a few weeks now, these pains of Raido past continue, even for the best of us. Oh, hold on, hi, Based Boomer Blob here, and on this episode of Content the Community Deserves, it's time to do the difficult task of defeating dofo elitism with words. Lots and lots of words. But let's get this out of the way. For our lesser able dofo players, here's what you asked for. The too long didn't watch clearly labeled hypothesis, no reading comprehension needed. The answers are literally the title, it depends, and get good. Thanks for watching. Well, great. It's the answer no one actually does yet again. Now, what's the hour-long script to get to that point this time? Well, you know, I could hit you guys with the Monte Carlo simulations of theoretical party encounters to find the true gear cut lines. But I don't like you guys that much to learn how to do that. Because there will always be an easier, more sane way to accomplish what I've done. And this time, I'm going to do exactly just that. We're going to go the low effort route. Today, we're going to defeat elitism in the most boomer way possible by channeling the inner anecdotal Andy. I'm just simply going to retell how I approached this problem long ago in the first raid Neopal released. I mean, I did promise this years ago, but it can't be that long, right? Right? Years ago, I used to be a DFO player. Not that one. That one. I've played this game basically since the original release of the NA server. But at this point, I never even participated in endgame. For years, I pretty much just logged in to do random hell scroll runs each day, and sometimes PvP'd on my one character, Battle Mage. It wasn't until the game was first dying that I even touched the designated endgame at the time, Otherverse, a cursed series of dungeons that would make current dofo players somehow cry more than the players did back then. Imagine solving problems with move properties rather than damage combos. And worse off, access to information in the dofo dark ages was at its lowest. It's where you got to see some really cringe stuff like assassin M satyrs and light witches. Gross. But your boy here had a very unique build too, and that was Chaser Press Magic Battle Mage. Now I'm not going to go into the specifics of this build or how I would actually end up playing it correctly in the future. The most important part of this was my sudden mindset change from casual gamer to discovery fiend. Because as previously stated, it was very hard to access quality information about anything, especially about a build that was more mystical than actually played by people. Seriously, there was literally no one else to copy in the English server. I was actually the only person being close to being viable, and I was a noob. So I had to make up everything I could myself. All the weird gear interactions, snapshot properties, and the actual hardest part, the application of said tech in actual content, all of that was on me. Looking back, it was probably the hardest way to get exposure into endgame content anyone could have done, but guess what? We did it live. And surprisingly enough, I ran into a lot of support, because I and others luckily got baited into it by the visual nut of witnessing damage caps. Because if you see something like this, you'd want to play better to see it more often. Seriously, despite having no community interaction up until this point, the positive feedback from others witnessing actually objectively troll tier performance despite damage cap nutting, all of that actually encouraged the right behavior from me. And that was how I began the Ligma grind set. Ligma Chasers, I mean chasers. However, as we all know, the original NA servers died, and at the height of my Discovery interest too. I did not want to end it there so suddenly, so I decided to go back to the motherland, the Korean Dungeon and Fighter server, to start it all over again. My start in the Korean server was pretty hype, and of course I had to make the newly released class, Female Slayer. Later known as the savior of the whole DNF franchise, that was what was on everyone's minds during the zombie days of old DFO. And damn was it fun to mess around with Swordmaster and the assist system. Ooh, the assist system. But as I was messing around being a noob, I didn't realize what the public perception of the class was at endgame. I was just doing what any new player should do. Leveling and making up stuff as I go thanks to the highly underappreciated feature of free skill resets. But in the distance, in an endgame world unknown to me, a council of the best, objectively correct, never wrong, always based Korean players have spoken. And they decreed Swordmaster, the class I made, was broken. Like, best character in the game broken. Looking back, it wasn't broken the way we would think of what makes a class strong today. Because when you wanted to consult your local suspicious penguin tier list, which didn't exist back then, you would have actually been searching complete rando, anecdotal Andy Naver blog posts. And let's just say there were a lot of interesting standards applied to each ranking. It sounds weird now, but hot takes like Ranger with a +12, Neil the Raider, Clash Master, Fish Slap, whatever, all of them were obviously more affected by very specific, explosive moments of set play rather than overall class kit and dungeon matchups. Back to our protagonist. For this patch of Swordmaster, their one trick claim to fame was Swift Demon Slash. Yeah, no shit. But the thing is, back then, no one could actually tell you how well the class played outside of that skill. Because what will always be fresh in the minds of the average player were SMs rolling up to a boss, charging a 5-second channeling cast, and proceeding to kill the guy in one skill. Yo, anime. It was to the point that their perceived BIS was combinations of Chronicle gear that gave bonuses to just that one skill. Full green red Swift Demon Slash Tainted Cron gear? Wait, what the hell's that? Needless to say, these were the information dark ages of KDnF, and the story of guy kills boss with one skill was too much for the average player to comprehend. Therefore, Swordmaster earned the tier list title of... Okay, I probably shouldn't translate this directly. Let's just say the Swift Demon Slash Woman of the Night.
Which makes her a hoe!
But of course, that would not last long, for it's time for the nerf bat. This new balance patch was a sneaky way to nerf a bunch of characters while simultaneously tricking everyone else into thinking that they did more damage. Because, additionally to any listed skill changes, all monster HP was increased greatly. Something like 30% or whatever. Basically, any class that didn't get buffed by that amount was actually nerfed. And guess what the change list looked like for the two female Slayer characters at the time? That's a whole lot of nothing! And with that, I reached endgame with one of the worst characters in the game, again. Typical Blob. The true ancient set of dungeons was one of the hardest endgame experiences in KDnF history, because there was no lack of boss pattern nonsense you had to deal with. Like, Mr. AoE knockdowns every time I wake up, the boss, getting hit with a 40% HP draining bleed because you had to YOLO across the street from Tonberries and a boss that reflects damage. What about healing yourself on damage reflect? because your class deals physical and magical damage at the same time. Or literally the whole Rush Pond boss fight. Oh, that's just great. And me, with my Skasa greatsword and full Kron set looking ass, had some great times trying to solo even the easiest true ancients. Man, it was so bad I couldn't even find footage of me doing almost 30-minute true Vilmark solo runs. But luckily enough, that didn't last too long, because a few weeks later was the big Chronicle set rework. Now, Cron sets are like the current Talisman system, except if you let dofo players design it instead. Even pre-rework, they were so wild that people opted to buff singular skills with even just tainted Chronicle pieces, rather than any of the epic sets at the time. It's not surprising then that class perception also included what Cron set you'd use, even at this point when they were technically at their weakest. With the heavy association of this gear with classes and the class unique mods they gave, it was also effectively a huge class balance patch. Let's add in a full rental Cron set event too so people can test the new things. And guess what? Some of the most influential builds were born at the time. But when it comes to our protagonist Swordmaster, all eyes were on two sets, the short sword focused monster ruler and the bludgeon adjacent ancient illusion. Even though I tried both and had fun with both, a bit of divine interference came with my character getting a Mistletoe drop in Hell mode. Now having the best bludgeon at the time, the only way to move forward was ancient illusion. And damn, even my first experiences with it after playing nerfed greatsword was a trip. Mixed damage skills meeting my poor +10 was subsidized by partial fixed damage skills, incredible AoE and crowd control for the time, and actual sustained damage for dealing with fights you just can't one-shot. It was a complete reversal of the suffering of meta greatsword past, all of which was immortalized in a relatively unknown video.
Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got a real jam going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Dance to your dance at the Space Jam. Alright.
I think it's crazy that there are Swordmaster mains today that started because of this video. But to me, the most interesting part was how I turned the meme into reality. Because all of a sudden, a whole world of endgame opened up to me, because at this point, all solos were now possible, through the power of the Bounce House. And if that wasn't enough, in the coming future, this build would see a bunch of its related skills buffed significantly, and the set play went out of control. But then it was released. The bane of dofo is no longer a beat-em-up boomers of the future. The first raid's content started to roll out. No, second spine doesn't count. Here it is, the biggest shift in endgame for the franchise. Anton raid. And we're going to start with something unknown to us now. We're going to be focusing on the initial Anton normal dungeon arc. Because in order to ready people for raid mechanics, a 4-player dungeon normal mode of the boss encounters was released first. It was close to what we currently know as guide mode, but balanced for 4 players. However, don't get it twisted. Guide mode adjacent or not, even without being the actual raid, normal Anton dungeons were pretty damn tough. Some of the most iconic memery showed itself at the time, like how I had to use greatsword instead of bludgeon for Egane for an hour because someone at DNF thought it would be funny for random CC procs on weapons to heal the boss. Or how about the eternal scrub killers even as far back as normal mode release? Agnes and Medell. Like seriously, literally no one can give you the right answer of all the mechanics of Medell, even today. So, not surprisingly, the difficulty of normal made a lot of my friends come to the conclusion to ignore raid for a while. Because if normal was this hard, how would we fare with stronger bosses and a time limit, let alone a language barrier? The only ones that soon rated first were players of the overpowered support characters. You know, Soulbender, FNen, Dark Templar, Weapon Master, the usual suspects, you know, the ones that should be never allowed to do damage. What? So yeah, I didn't need them, I was fine on the sidelines. Despite a lot of experience suffering normal Anton dungeons, I was still not as sweaty as you'd think. With my main character lineup of Battle Mage, Swordmaster, and not mentioned at this point Chaos, I just had my fun doing my Otherverse set play, True Ancient grinding, and the occasional normal Anton dungeon run. Quite a lot happened, but just like now with the rolling Third Awakening release, there was a rolling Second Awakening release schedule. And when it was Female Slayer's turn for Second Awakening, the difference in damage for my Bludgeon Swordmaster was real. Buffs to a class I thought was already decent enough started to show scary performance. To be fair, it kinda seemed that way too when I was playing Battle Mage and Chaos alongside, but for some reason, without even understanding the damage formula at this point, I just knew something was up with their scaling with Satyr. Like, it didn't feel right that these characters would do better on a duo with Soulbender rather than Satyr. Until you looked at their passives. Flat int all over the place. For example, Chaos had a minus 30% scaling with Satyr compared to normal classes. Add that to the fact that these classes had the hardest execution of the whole KOFO cast, and it's not shocking that I went with Swordmaster as a first character instead.
Ooh, oh my god! Battle Mage, let's just play Swordmaster.
And boy did I take that first character seriously. Because in developing my normal solo mode set play, I realized that what my perception of what was minimum cut line was way higher than Korean class perception suggested. Going back a bit, remember how I said there were 2 Chronicle sets that saved Swordmaster? Well, one of them is going to be BIS, right? And for Koreans, it seems to have already been decided, thanks to this video from back then. Man, I swear this video was extremely influential, and it caused more info and set play to arise from meta slaves flocking to the nearest auction hall to buy their hundreds of millions of worth of elemental short sword titles and plats. And with short sword mastery levels as high as their IQs, they've uncovered the code to training mode sandbags. Noogle. And of course, in the future, our community would be baited into it also. Hold on, magic damage? How did you play this so long and not know it's only physical? Jeez, short sword players, dude. So yeah, no one cared about Bludgeon. And even later, when its performance was proven a bit more, the way Bludgeon Swordmaster would often be described should show you its perception. It's good enough for boats with Tarbaza, but if you get enough gear, short sword is better and can evolve past that. Let alone the BIS Katakata of Katana build. As you can see, going into my first Anton raids, my build was pretty much an unknown. That meant the evil elitist raid leaders would never let my plus 10 Mistletoe guy into their pub raid, because it's not the BIS. But as luck would have it, my privileged support class playing friends who raided first were able to find probably low-key the most influential person in DFO history, and that would be our KDnF raid leader friend, the one we know as KRDan. Every raid release, there's going to be players complaining about getting accepted into raids, but they rarely do what's suggested of them. Join a guild and prove your worth past your gear. Now, my situation was a bit different, but through the dreaded technique of social interaction, I had my chance this time. Okay, obvious start. Do you know how to do raid? Well, I guess I know all the normal mode stuff, and you can just read about raid changes. Alright, call in the assist. Taco Bell Dan, tell him how we've been doing. Whoa, 30 minutes, don't tell him that. Alright, time to throw out the secret weapon. To prove my worth, at the end of the day, I showed him this video. And oh my god, future editor Blob here, I can't believe I showed him a video like this early. We're gonna have to cut in with some commentary to show you how slick it was. Alright, starting off, we're gonna go to left room first because swapping in the Korean servers was awful. So we're going to make use of this auto-scroller segment at the start in order to swap through all the items. And coming up, we're also going to buff ourselves with 108 while clearing away the totems. And then combo into tossing slash, see what he's gonna do, slash through to avoid the damage, drill to hit stun it, and cash in that counter damage with the burst combo. Now for the right room, we're going to precast Ferris, which is an NPC you could even use in raids, because if you do that there, it's going to combo into net from your throw at the start, do a little bit tossing slash to make sure it hits, combo while the spin is happening, and end it in Gloria, and then we end in Drill. That drill at the end was actually really important, because Drill avoids PvE gravity protection that bosses have. At that point in the combo, the guy took a lot of damage, so he was itching to wake up with an invuln move. But somehow at this point, I already knew about PvE damage protection and how to exploit it. Damn, Drill was godlike. And obviously, the question of can I do Battlefield has been answered. Hell yes. As you can see, this was the previously mentioned normal mode soloing I've been doing. The mob HP is clearly less, but my thought process in showing him this was that it would be good enough to show I knew mob mechanics at least. But what I didn't know was that this clear time and all of this tech showed cell level party performance already. Of course, I wouldn't know this, and at the time, public perception of Bludgeon SM was not even in conversation. But guess what? This appeal worked. We're in there. And with that, a zero experience cron scrub got into a semi-pub Anton raid party. The first few weeks of such was a real eye-opener. Because ladies and gentlemen, the average player in the Korean server wasn't actually good at all. Still isn't even now. And all that messing around I did before even trying proved to actually be an abnormal amount of preparation. That was actually godlike. Okay, fine, a bit above the Korean average starting from the first raid. And as I got better at the intricacies of the raid version of the fights, random Korean players started to notice, especially the friends of the raid leader, who would end up coming from many different guilds on different servers. You don't know how big my ego blew up when I found out that his friends had to convince random Koreans in the pub that the Balcom Chronicle Swordmaster in their party was the carry and not to leave. It was bonkers. I mean, let's look at what I brought to the table. Did you notice that weird necklace in that Battlefield video? This is the blob neck. You are not allowed to call it anything else. It was that significant to my first experience in Raid. And buying it was almost a mistake, to be honest. I was just trying to find a good off-slot legendary to boost my damage, because as a Raid newbie, I thought the Shadow Seeker necklace was just a good cheap alternative to buying something like Attack Maximizer or Captain Trooper Core. Because you know, gear and public perception or whatever. Ew, pink magic stones. Now I did think a little bit about it, because my mindset was, okay, it's not as obviously stat bloated as these other common off-slot viable options, but I thought, I dealt enough multi-hit that this fixed Dark Elemental damage proc would make up for it. Or at least make up for it in a price-performance basis.
Arr, SpongeBob, you're spending all me money.
But the unintentional tech revealed itself through his purchase. Because here's the thing, a lot of classes at the time still had great difficulty in killing the first boss of the raid, Tog. So characters that did well here, but not necessarily to other parts of the raid, were actually considered higher tier. I know, sounds stupid, but lots of people parroted this anyway. This is because the main gimmick of Tog is that he starts with the maximum value for each elemental resist, combined with near max base defense. When your party baits the element they want, Tog receives a negative a lot debuff to the matching colored element. This allows party members with the ability to deal damage in that element to finally deal more damage than ones. Now, this necklace was actually a secret Tog killing weapon that went unrealized. You see, the Shadowseeker necklace had an option where every attack you dealt would proc a defense ignoring additional dark elemental damage line that even increased further based on your dark elemental damage stat. Normally, these fixed damage procs are kind of meh due to not scaling with player stats. But when Tog baited into dark mode, this unassuming proc would get buffed by the huge increase in effective elemental damage gained from his new minus a lot dark resist. Okay, so everyone knew about this elemental bonus damage interaction already actually. It's just, these line of legendary accessories didn't actually result in big damage for most classes due to the low value of their procs. But for me, it would end up being legendary. I mean, let's be real, I was playing a meme set, but unlike most scrubs falling for just the surface level haha illusion part of the build, at this point, I was already starting to do some type of min-maxing this so-called 1, or I guess 2 or 3 dimensional build. But then there was Dark Unleash bug. Something many SM players even now don't know is that the dark version of Unleash deals more damage than the other element versions. That's because instead of applying some random useless status effect during the drill, Dark Unleash has an unlisted multi-hit damage over time portion that shows up at the end of the skill. But the old bug was that this dot would do its first few hits for every hit of the drill, instead of just once at the end. The result was an 80 plus hit monster that did probably even 80% more damage than the other elements during this period. Add that together and the full combo does like 200 hits in 6 seconds, and it makes you wonder how it's going to look when added with my current uptime. Well, the complete destruction of Tog. I was playing a Chronicle dealer character that killed Tog at the speed of M Brawler, but dealt full mixed epics damage afterwards. And the cherry on top? Bludgeon Mastery used to have a stacking elemental shred of about 40 to increase the damage my party members, that I probably outdamaged anyway, actually. And with the bludgeon tech I developed for Nurbe, Battlefield, and later Eugene, it would even carry without the need of holders.
Combo into another combo with a super, but that combo is not landing any combo, but when he knocked down, it's still a combo, you understand? Hell no!
Needless to say, the position I played the most was Party 3 Smoke into Solo Dealer Hatch 3. Ampo, no. Because to the raid leader and his friends, I was the vape god of smoke. But what we know right now, the story didn't even end right there. Because the NA servers are back up, and it's time to do it again in New Game Plus.
No, I'll do it and we kill him on the hug. Because yes.
I was gonna say, I'm just into it because most of the stuff from the last festival, even if it wasn't that great overall, a lot of it was unexpected.
Yeah.
Lancers came out of literally nowhere.
Disintegrated.
Lancers came out of nowhere because they're like, who damaged Cap, by the way, in that? Somebody had a visual damage Cap. Nice.
That's the highest one I've ever hit before 90.
With me? Dude, excuse me? Blob, I'm a 1900 Vitality Satyr.
What?
I'm just gonna skip all the new server run-up. Like all New Game Plus runs, the story is basically the same. And of course I had the same Mistletoe drop, so I would be slamming again. The only difference now is everyone knows about this, and how it's actually a real way to play in Raid. And rolling up to a new raid that was already solved in the beta server, DFOG players seeking knowledge of the future were all over the place. And sometimes it was cringe. Like asking some rando Soulbender player to Google Chosun about your class's sandbag, Noogle, and not even trying to raid unless he gives you a good ranking. But you know what? Remember that anti-Bludgeon elitism going into KDnF Anton raid? With so many people in dofo have seen what I've done there, who's going to question one of the only proven players in the server? That's right, performance trumped made-up cut lines. Because for this period, I was not just a god of smoke, I went where I pleased.
What is actually going on?
I wonder if I did damage with the rental weapon.
What, you're using a rental weapon? Oh my god.
Why is there 4 sizes? Why is the boss already at 43%? What the hell, dude?
Hello?
Because this is the secret technique.
That would increase subliminal, yes.
Shut up.
Oh, you did it! Oh!
Are we actually beating party 4? Oh my god.
Yeah. Invul now.
Okay. Yo, let's go. Oh my god, the hit stop! Oh god!
Yeah.
Oh my god, we did it!
Now there's something very important that's on the table by being in DFOG. Because without language connection barriers to screw over item swapping, cell raids were now on the table. Of course, Beater Blob is going to lead one of the first cell raids. And that story and how you can thank us for destroying one of the first attempts at price collusion can be told at another time. Because I have to tell you about one of the biggest mistakes I've made in Anton Raid. I underestimated myself. You see, I never tried to participate at Anton's cell parties as Bludgeon SM, even though my experience hinted otherwise. Instead, I only led cell on M Satyr and Chaos who was finally a strong class. For now. This was because I didn't believe I was doing that much better than Korean opinion of the build. I knew I was playing above its perception, but I didn't think I was playing that much better to the point that I'm matching epic geared character self-performance. Remember, it was mostly price performance Ancient Illusion was best at, where the next viable jump was actually just full, specifically Dark Goth. Well, as this video is in retrospective, of course I was actually wrong. In late game practice runs I did for fun, I would find out that this ceiling never existed. Bludgeon was truly cell tier.
Yo, isn't this good?
But Ancient Illusion had to end somewhere. The last time it was useful was Luke Raid, and that was a stretch. That's not the way Ancient Illusion should be remembered though, because with this video you're seeing right now, the full story is now out there. A meme build that was not recognized by the populace was actually good, but the true ceiling was never reached. So you have to think to yourself, why is every raid cut line always higher than normal? Is it truly the minimum needed to raid? Why does no one ever ask what skill level is required instead? To me, the greatest thing about DFO is that the actual skill ceiling is always higher than you think. And even at the low end, return on skill is way higher than the return on gear. If the pub gear cut line is so high to the point of ignoring boss patterns, then it's actually really easy for new players to differentiate themselves from this so-called elitism. You just have to know how to do all the boss fight mechanics they don't want to see. So my friends, let's go out there and actually reduce the cut line by at least memorizing the Ozma raid guide. Seriously, half the pages are pictures and you have no excuse.